This is part 2 and the conclusion of the story titled Wife Kept a Male Friend After Marriage. In the part 1 of this story, Mrs. Leah, who is married to Mr. Victor, we saw how she met her old friend Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben was her gym instructor before they lost contact, and Mrs. Leah married another man, Mr. Victor. All of a sudden, the two met in a sports center. After their meeting, Mr. Ben wouldn't let her stay. He kept calling her on the phone and sending her cards like in their old days. Like those days, he used to send her cards with a particular fragrance that drives her crazy. Now he repeated that gift again, and I believe this special gift is one secret that her husband, Mr. Victor, did not know about her. One day in her husband's presence, she was sniffing the fragrance and was smiling. She was doing that not minding what the husband would think. She was doing that with no bad intention, but the truth was that she didn't know that she had started building up feelings for Mr. Ben. She didn't know that that moment of recalling the past she has allowed to awaken within her will resurrect what she had with Mr. Ben that was long gone and dead. When her husband found out the truth about this card and how attached she was to it, he was not happy about that. She didn't mind her husband or care to protect his feelings. She cared more about the card. The call making between Mrs. Leah and Mr. Ben continued like before when they were single, and nothing changed about the call. They can make call for over an hour in a stretch. As the call was ongoing, she started having a false labor. Mr. Ben heard her scream and was asking what was the problem on the phone, but she could not say. She didn't understand what was happening to her. It was her first pregnancy. She dropped the phone and managed to sit down. She was 8 to 9 months gone. That was what made her to be confused about the development. She picked her phone to call her husband. She dialed his number to call him, but she didn't know that a big surprise was on the way. When the husband heard her weak voice, he dropped what he was doing and started rushing home. He told her not to drop the call, that he wants to be with her on the phone till he gets home. She could not hold the phone for long because of pains. She had to drop the call. The big surprise landed. That was Mr. Ben, her old friend, the gym instructor. She was surprised to see him in their house, or him knowing the direction to their house, because she could not remember giving him their address. He moved to hold her like he understood the problem. In the part 1 of this story, some people said in the comments that one cannot, because of marriage, throw away their friends, while some kicked against it. But my question is this: keeping intimate friends close even after marriage, is it healthy for our marriage? In the process of Mr. Ben holding Mrs. Leah, her husband, whom she called, rushed in and removed Mr. Ben's hand from his wife's belly angrily. Mr. Victor asked Ben who gave him the permission to come into his house without his notice, and who made him his family doctor that he can hold his wife that close in his absence. Mr. Ben started by defending himself that he meant no bad. He said that he was just on call with his wife and suddenly she screamed and dropped the phone. He said that he thought that something bad has happened to her, and for that reason he made all effort to locate her here. Mr. Victor was not interested in his explanation. He warned him to cut everything he has with his wife. Mr. Ben left. When he left, Mr. Victor was not comfortable and was very angry to see Mr. Ben in his compound. He said that he didn't know that this has gotten to the point of this man, Mr. Ben, coming to his house in his absence. Mr. Victor followed him behind, foaming in anger. He met him on his way and stopped him. He warned him never to be seen around his wife again. He told him that what he had with his wife ended the day he paid her dowry. He told him that that day should be the last day he will be seen in his house again, that he has kept quiet enough. Mr. Ben was silent, staring at him, not knowing what to tell him because it was so clear that he was at fault. After giving all the warning, Mr. Victor left him and walked away. Ben later walked away. Mrs. Leah located Ben at the sports center to apologize to him on behalf of her husband. She said that she was sorry for the embarrassment he received from her husband. Of course, Mr. Ben would not refuse Leah's apologies. Before she could finish talking, he gave her a welcome smile. This was happening 2 hours after Mr. Ben's encounter with Mr. Victor. When Leah saw Ben smiling, she put out her hand towards him for a handshake of reconciliation. Both of them shook hands and reconciled. Leah went as far as pulling him up from the seat while still holding his hand. Mr. Ben was surprised but followed her, not knowing what she wanted to do. She pulled him up and gave him a hug to say thank you to him for accepting her apologies. Next was both of them sitting together while exercising. One may say that keeping your friends after marriage is not bad because you have been with them for years and probably some of them have been of great help to you in the past. That discarding them might seem difficult to you, but at the same time, keeping a friend who will make you disobey your partner and share the moment you should have with your partner with them is a threat to the peace of your marriage. As they were busy exercising, Mr. Victor came in and saw them. He has been looking for his wife everywhere until he came here and saw her. This was a moment of heartbreak for Mr. Victor. It was obvious to him now that the feelings and connection between his wife and Mr. Ben was still alive. He left them disappointed. When Mr. Victor left them without saying a word to them, they remained calm, feeling guilty and not talking to each other. Mr. Victor was not seen on his way, but one can tell that he was going home or wherever he was going to that moment without any control of himself. The next thing was a loud and a heavy car sound hitting against something hard. Both of them slowly stood up, looking at Mr. Victor's car ran into an electric pole, and it was an accident. Mrs. Leah lost her husband. Now the reality began. She was crying all alone in the house when a call came into her phone from her husband's village. It was her husband's people calling her on the phone. She picked the call, and of course she knew that the call would not be friendly because everyone has heard what was going on between her and her husband and Mr. Ben before now. The caller sounded a heavy warning to her that she should vacate the premises before he gets to the city. The caller asked her to get ready with her lover boy to explain to them what happened to their brother. At this point, she knew that the case was not going to be easy at all. She started crying the more, but crying and shedding tears would not in any way solve this matter. I forgot to tell us that the caller called the child in her womb abomination, affirming that their brother was not responsible for the pregnancy and that she should take it to the owner. At this point, Leah has no option than to go to her friend Ben to tell him what was happening and ask him how both of them can fight this challenge through. When she got to where Ben was seated, she tapped him on the shoulder and Ben turned to see her. Ben stood up to listen to her and she started to explain things to Ben. After her explanation to Mr. Ben, she expected Mr. Ben to embrace her. At least she has no husband again. She was totally free from Mr. Ben, but she was disappointed. Mr. Ben listened to her explanation, looked at her but walked away after saying, "I am sorry, I can't do this." This has been one of the major problems in marriages today. I know of someone that immediately after her marriage, she brought out her mobile phone SIM card and broke it. She damaged it. At a point, I thought she was not normal, but I came to realize that she was trying to protect her marriage. It might seem stupid, but she realized that there are great difference from keeping a male friend after marriage that you were not emotionally attached to and keeping a male friend that you were emotionally attached to. This girl that broke her SIM card realized that the memory cannot suppress. It is better you run away from it when you know it can hurt you. Please, if you are married and all of a sudden you started getting used to a male friend that you always want to be with him, or you feel comfortable staying around him more than your husband, please watch it closely because something is building up inside of you. If you don't, I see you make a mistake you are going to wish you never did. And men, please, when you notice this closeness from any lady around you, help that lady by disappearing from her reach. She will feel bad you are gone, but you might just be helping her and as well saving your fellow man's marriage. Let us join hands together to save our marriages. Please share this video and please tell us what you think about this video in the comment area, and see you next Friday.